How many times have you taken a trade, only to get stopped out right before the market moves exactly where you predicted? Frustrating, right? That's where order blocks come in. In this video, I'll show you how to combine order blocks with market structure to find high probability trade setups, the same way banks and institutions trade. If that sounds valuable, make sure to hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss future videos. Let's get started. So, what exactly is an order block? In simple terms, order blocks are refined versions of supply and demand zones. From basic price action theory, we know that markets move in impulsive waves, followed by corrective pullbacks, all driven by the decisions of market participants. When an impulsive move begins to the upside, we mark that starting point as a demand zone. Why? Because that's where buyers previously stepped in with strong conviction. If price revisits that area, there's a high probability buyers will look to re-enter and push price higher again. On the flip side, when an impulsive move begins to the downside, we call that starting point a supply zone. This is where sellers previously entered the market in size. If price comes back to this zone, chances are sellers will step in again and defend it. Now, here's where order blocks take things a step further. Order blocks are a special type of supply and demand zone, but instead of being defined just by retail buying and selling pressure, they're created when large institutional orders hit the market. These orders cause a sharp imbalance between buyers and sellers. We often see this imbalance through what's called a fair value gap. That's when price moves so quickly in one direction that it leaves unfilled orders behind, essentially creating a vacuum in the chart. The market often comes back later to fill that gap and rebalance. In practice, we mark the last candle before the gap as our order block zone. That's the candle where institutions likely made their decisions. If price returns to that level, it often reacts sharply because those large players are still active around that area. So, to put it simply, order blocks are supply and demand zones with a twist. The key difference is that they highlight areas where the big money, the banks and institutions, are placing orders. That's what gives them so much power in trading. Now let's talk about how to actually mark your order blocks on the chart. The rule is simple. We take the entire candle before the fair value gap and mark that as our order block zone. The color of the candle doesn't matter. Green, red, or even a doji with barely any body. All of these can form valid demand order blocks in the right context. Here's an important detail. Sometimes you'll see a wick grab liquidity just before the imbalance occurs. In that case, make sure to include the wick as part of the order block zone. That wick often represents the real starting point of institutional activity. And when that happens, your stop loss should always be placed below the wick for protection. Now, not all order blocks are the same size. If the order block is small, you'll want to use a slightly wider stop loss beneath it. Why? Because even though order blocks are strong zones,